Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. Today I'm joined by Patrick Montgomery for the second episode of this sort of Liverpool double piece, and we're going to be talking a lot today about Florian Wirtz, obviously the Premier League's most expensive signing, and why potentially he's not got up to speed yet for Liverpool. Okay, welcome back to the show. Obviously today we're going to be speaking about Florian Wirtz, which I think a lot of people are speaking about, and we're going to give our 2 pence, but we're going to do it in a way that's a little bit more, not the 007 stuff we see online, which, yeah. We're going to be giving sort of some context to Wirtz. Me and Patrick have watched a lot of sort of Leverkusen and how they used Florian Wirtz and sort of how Liverpool can adapt to him, sort of the struggles that Liverpool have had this season, which we've already covered, but sort of moving on into how Florian Wirtz, in my opinion, and I think in Patrick's as well, is going to be fine.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw just one bit of data up on your screen. So I've got Florian Wirtz 24-25 metrics at Leverkusen per 90 in comparison to his per 90 at Liverpool this season. Now, just one thing to note, obviously the sample size is very small from this season, but pretty much every metric is down. His actual key passes isn't that far down, which is obviously a good sort of showing for him. And the only stat that's actually up on this board is the touches in the first third, which we'll speak about later. But I just wanted to ask you right off the top, Patrick, sort of, what do you make of Florian Wirtz as a player over the last 4 years he's been at it, hasn't he?
Incredible. Yeah, I think first and foremost, in my opinion, I think opinion of a lot of people, I think he's going to be one of the best in Europe, to be honest, in his position. I think what he did at Leverkusen, what he's done in the periods of the national team, and I think the profile of him, everything about him, he can score, he can create, he can play in tight spaces, he can penetrate, he can receive under pressure. I think he's a player that, given the right time and given the patience and in the right system, if you can find him in the right areas, which I think we'll discuss, he's going to be a really good player, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a brilliant point to me before we started this, and we're going to bring this back now into sort of what Leverkusen did a lot under Xavi Alonso, and that was sort of playing with these double tens. And can you speak to me about how? So I think a lot of the struggles with Wirtz at the moment is sort of, well, I think from Slot's perspective as well, is the positioning of him. So I think when we covered him, I actually said initially he was going to play off the left. I just thought, got bombing fullback, bring him inside, similar to Gakpo, but can stay more inside. And I think we've seen that a little bit against, I think, Palace, and I think he did it in the second half against Atletico Madrid and stuff like that. But in this system, this is a very distinct system in it of where your players play. Can you explain to me sort of his role in this Leverkusen team?
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, either they played, you got like a 3-4-3 there. They also kind of played a 4-2-3-1. It's quite fluid. I think first and foremost, he was part of a really well-oiled team. So I think it's a team that had a clear playing style, clear patterns, clear triggers. So I think the team fundamentally knew what his strengths were and how to get him on the ball. So I think first and foremost, you can look even in the wing backs. So I think straight away they gave him the width, they gave him the space to come inside if he wanted to drift inside. I think he's definitely one that likes to drift. I think he's somebody that's comfortable receiving the ball in deeper areas, even if he may not be most effective, but also in central positions or high areas or in off the side. So I think first and foremost, the wing backs offered that width for him. I think the deep liers, particularly Xhaka as well, people probably underestimate his ability to play quickly and penetrate vertically. So in a lot of the build-up, yes, of course, teams will circulate and make sure they retain the ball, but I think what he did really effectively during that time was basically play quickly with ball speed, with appreciation to find Wirtz in those spaces we've spoken about where he can really do damage. So in quick transition, spaces where he can get a turn in, he can carry the ball, he can slide in runners. But also I think whether they had the focal point of Boniface or Schick, whether they played 4-2-3-1 or 3-4-3, I think that profile of centre forward, he knew he could either play off, so act as a wall. He knew that they could work the channels for him, so he always had the option of sliding down the side. And I think fundamentally he knew the relationships he had in different areas of the pitch, and that then would naturally give you confidence to be able to really express yourself. So I think that, for me, in my opinion, watching Leverkusen, and like a lot of us have, made him so successful in that system, really.
You think Patrick Schick and Boniface, I think they're actually quite similar to the two Liverpool centre forwards
Possibly.
in terms of
Yeah.
channel running and out ball. I think he's like a little bit more sort of against the centre back, a bit more like a Patrick Schick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Ekatiké's probably got that spinning on either side that Wirtz could. When I was watching Wirtz and Ekatike actually coming obviously before Isak, I was thinking them two are going to gel like straight away. I was thinking they are perfect players for each other. Very ball to feet, but I think we mentioned before they both got that sort of can play in transition as well, especially Ekatike. I think we'll go on to speak about sort of Wirtz's physicality in a minute, but I think Ekatike, I was looking at ball to feet, but then he can do the other side of the coin, which is where I was looking at Wirtz and going, well, that suits you perfectly. A little bit similar to Xavi Simons, who obviously we covered on the channel, can come to feet, but then the running with the ball and playing in behind and threading balls. I think for me, them two work really, really well. But yeah, I wanted to show you just on the board. I think Patrick was just speaking about sort of how fluid their build-up is. Now, I'm going to show you sort of what I recognise with Leverkusen when they were playing. So I think it was opposition dependent, but in the 3-4-3, as you were saying, they like to play 4-2-3-1 quite often. And now it's all sort of dependent on which side the opposition is looking to block on. So I think if we just take it back to the goalkeeper, what they look to do is, imagine this is obviously Jeremy Frimpong, who's now at Liverpool. They like to shift on the back line, and obviously straight away you can sort of see the lopsided 4-2-3-1, and that gets Wirtz sort of pretty much everywhere in terms of freedom on this left-hand side. And yeah, I think positionally for Liverpool, where would you see him sort of getting? I think when I was looking at, obviously we were looking at the open play touch maps where he's touching the ball a lot, and I'm thinking, where is he going to get them touches of the ball for Liverpool the most? I think if you look at his per game numbers last season for Leverkusen and this season for Liverpool very sort of dominant possession team this season, his touches are actually down by 21 from 80 to 59. So if we're looking at getting Wirtz on the ball more impactful areas, where would you, in your opinion, put him in a Liverpool team?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one because he's an individual that is a bit of a drifter, like I said. So he will go looking for the ball. He's not necessarily somebody that, yes, predominantly he wants to be in a 10 position or off the sides, but I think he's somebody really that you need to be able to find quickly. And I think you need to be able to find a lot of these players make their initial movement, and if the pass doesn't come, then they're marked. And I think it's that timing, and I think again that comes with relationships and player understanding, whether it's centre backs trying to find him, whether it's the deep line midfielders at Liverpool trying to find him, full backs trying to find him. I think, in my opinion, when I've watched him, I think the best you get out of him is when you can find him in that instant moment. He makes the movement, he gets on the ball, then he can play. Because I think physically, I know we've spoken about that, I think he is 100% robust in the sense of fitness and athleticism and covering the ground. I think, even to be fair, in the Bundesliga, he did pretty well in terms of resisting contact under duels. But I think the Premier League is obviously, as we know, a different beast when it comes to like the intensity, the tempo. So I think fundamentally, you need to find a system that basically finds him in those spaces, in those pockets where he can get his turn in, he can carry the ball, and he can combine. I think that's the magic, basically, where you want to find him.
Yeah, I think I'll just push it on to sort of show what we're speaking about. So I think, in general, one of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit more about sort of this Wirtz physicality thing. So I think when players move to the Premier League, I think there's a lot demanded of them physically straight away. And I think when new signings come here, even if their sort of execution of certain roles and sort of their technical ability is really good, I think when people look at players struggling from a different league, they automatically go physicality, like they're not up to speed, they can't match the tempo. I think a lot of people maybe said that with sort of Benjamin Sesko when he was coming over. I think straight away, as soon as he struggled, it was no, physically he's not capable. What do you put down? Do you see any sort of physical question marks? Is there certain aspects where maybe the dueling or maybe the height space stuff? Where would you see?
I think there's obviously different elements to physicality. I think it's a word that's, you said, is bandied about a lot. And it's like, what do you mean by physicality? And I think there's no doubt he's able to cover ground. So his energy's there, his legs are there, like he's able to cover the pitch both in and out of possession. I think, of course, there's going to be elements where under contact, in duels, it will be a different level of intensity that he's probably facing. And I think the speed of the game as well. So he may not have the time to feel for pressure, hold pressure. The pressure may already arrive. So I think there's different elements from like a league perspective that I think he may, but I think it's something that for sure he is not somebody that lacks physicality. I think he's somebody that has that physicality. I think it's just more for me, probably maybe the timing of the passes that come into him means the physicality arrives quicker.
Yeah.
Because it's not coming in when he necessarily would want it to then get his turn or to then feel the pressure. So I think there's different elements. I think it's something that gets bandied about a lot, like you say, but I think it's, for now, maybe at the moment, it's contact and it's maybe feeling pressure.
Too soon, you
possibly,
mean?
Yeah, it's possibly, or it because he's not necessarily getting the ball as quickly as he likes. The pressure's then coming at a moment he doesn't anticipate. So that's probably more where it is, but something again that with experience, Bernardo Silva's a good example. When he first came to Manchester City from Monaco, like in terms of like people kept saying physicality, and I think now you look at Bernardo Silva, people say that's probably one of the strengths.
So
I think
definitely.
It's not necessarily exactly the same types of players, but players that play maybe in similar positions and drift. You could even argue Maddison at Spurs when he first went in and didn't necessarily find a position in the system that really suited him, and then it was like, okay, he's struggling a little bit, he keeps getting bounced off. I think there's so many different elements to it that can lead to people saying physically he struggles or physically, which I don't think is the case really.
Joe, you just mentioned something there, and I actually said this to a couple of my mates. I think my biggest gripe with Wirtz at the moment, and it's not really so much of he's doing something wrong, it's more, again, like the league adaptation, but I don't think it's physical. I think it's like, I think sometimes, so he'll get the ball sort of played into him here, and let's say the centre-half's on his back. I think sometimes he wants to try and like downshift, like decelerate and sort of like look for the right ball, but then he'll get the contact really early, really, really fast, really aggressive, and then he'll lose the ball. And then I think the next time, still a young player, of course, I think next time when he gets it, he's like, right, I'm going now. And I think he's not playing in one tempo, if that makes sense. He's not playing at the same speed of play.
Yeah, and I think that's just different leagues. I think it's different experiences. Don't forget what he's been used to for such a long period of time. And I think that is something that he just needs exposure to. I think it's something that, like any player, he just needs repetition. It's like, okay, that example's happened. I've done this the second time, hasn't quite worked. Maybe I need to go back to this example. And I think that is, for me, down to games and getting the minutes in. Understanding, again, I keep repeating myself, but playing styles, when the ball's going to come into him, the best positions he can be in to maybe avoid these things happening, or can he make a movement to then go into another space that stops that direct pressure straight away. So
I think one of the funny things, so we mentioned this in like in the general piece about Liverpool. Now I keep using this game as an example because I know Liverpool won the game, but the Burnley 1-0 when they played this 5-4-1, I'm looking at, I don't know if this is right or wrong to say this, but I'm looking at they're playing United next, and Amorim hopefully will go 5-4-1 instead of 5-2-3. But if we're looking at sort of playing against, this is probably the most compact and deep block Liverpool are going to play this season. And let's just say actually they've stepped out just a little bit. Now for me, with Wirtz, I think one thing that you mentioned there about Granit Xhaka was sort of the ability to wrap the passes in. Now, this is where Liverpool are going to play the majority of their time in the final third. Now, for me, I think Florian Wirtz, I don't want to compare him to David Silva because I think that's a bit lazy, but I think he's very much a player who I would associate with standing in the pocket. I think he's someone who can sort of, if he takes the ball and traps the ball, I don't think he's someone who can knock off the ball really easily. I think maybe in the box when it gets a bit crowded, I think decisions and timings come a little bit more uncertain. But I don't see a clear sort of build-up mechanism to access like the playmaker of this team. So like we were speaking in the Liverpool piece again about we've lost sort of the Trent long ball volume from deep, sort of the aggressiveness against the set defence. Virgil van Dijk's obviously got this beautiful switch, but maybe this isn't really the right, time and space to do it in. Trent's not here. Salah's obviously 1v1, but then Szoboszlai's maybe inside. Bradley's there. He's not really going to launch something. So, you're looking for someone who can take that creative burden, and automatically, obviously, you look at Florian Wirtz to be that player. How would you say how do they fashion the ball into Wirtz more often? Is it coming deeper? Is it?
I think it's so difficult. I think
Yeah.
naturally what tends to happen with these types of creative players is they'll come looking for the ball anyway.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, if they do drop deep and get it off the centre backs, that's when they can then combine, and it might be then that opens up a little bit of space. And I think you've touched on it there, but I think what you don't want is it to become predictable, and you don't want it to become where they're in a certain fixed position, and if they don't get it there, they're not going to touch the ball. So I think you need that balance of, it might be sacrifice runs from other midfield players just to create that space, just to give him the ability to, even if players are making this run, for him to come into these spaces, to then have that ability to combine with the other centre forward or the third forward, or whatever you want to call it. So that then again comes down to passing patterns, styles, specifics of a particular game. But I think if in general, if you're wanting to get, in my opinion, your creative players onto the pitch, a lot of that can come through sacrifice runs and
taking bodies away.
Ball speed, the things that you tend to hear a lot, quick ball speed, not turning down a forward pass. I think it's so easy to get lulled into a false sense of security when you dominate the ball, to just recycle and recycle, and then the movements become quite ploddy rather than incisive and like really penetrative. So for me, there's a variety of different ways. I think there's always a big difficulty in breaking a low block, but I think for somebody like him, that needs to be an understanding with teammates, which may come in time, as to, okay, if you go here, I'm going here, and vice versa. And I think that's the $1 million question, really, for somebody with such a high level of attributes.
Yeah.
You want him in that position when you're trying to penetrate against such a high number of bodies.
Yeah, I think if you throw a blanket, sort of, I know it's a weird analogy, but if you just throw a blanket over sort of this player, this player, this player, probably these two players and maybe the right winger, I'm looking at a team that's very good technically in small spaces. I think they're a team that, we saw this in pre-season. I know it's pre-season, so a lot of people are just going to kind of discard it, but I did watch Liverpool a lot in pre-season just to see what they were changing. And there was a lot of sort of these, you know, really, really overloaded rondos, like on the sides. Now, in my opinion, with Wirtz, especially against the press, like I think Wirtz can play in these sort of short spaces, but then it's the other side of the coin, which is the running with the ball and, you know, traveling with the ball. I think one thing for me with Wirtz is I think he's perfectly fine against a low block. I think he will work there. I think he's got the right touch, the sort of the passing. I think he's a really like slick mover. I think he can swivel on it. I think he can do a lot of things in the pockets. For me, when I look at him, I really enjoy watching him carry the ball. I'm really enjoying watching him carrying the ball, and I'm looking at sort of Liverpool have obviously gone to the flying fullbacks, as we mentioned, Ekitike, Isak. These are more runners, and Wirtz is probably a pass-first player, but I think it might actually take a little bit more end-to-endness to get to get more out of him. I mean, the Chelsea game.
I think the Chelsea game was one of his first actions. Like, you see the quality that he has with that first touch, but I think there was also a moment when there was a quick transition, if I'm right, where he did receive the ball in this space, and Mo just made his run a little bit too early and was flagged offside before he played the slip. So I think those are definitely the moments where I think he's at his best. Yeah. It's just like you say, it's got to be trying to find that balance for him of, there will be a lot of games, particularly at home, where he's going to have to battle with bodies around him. And I think there's no doubt Liverpool now have players in these front positions with Ekitike and Isak as well, which are players with a lot of variety to their game. So you could argue that is a extra strength of theirs now this season. Yeah. But again, like we've spoken about a lot, it's going to be building these relationships and understanding, if you make that movement, what movement am I going to make? And I think for him, there's still be that ability to carry the ball in these spaces. It might just be that he has to be a bit more combination focused if it's not a quick transition with bigger spaces in central areas. Yeah.
Would you say, do you prefer him central or left wing? Could you pick one?
I don't think so. I think I'd always, in my opinion, I see him as somebody that can drift naturally. So I think he's particularly strong, of course, in central positions in a transition. Yeah. If he does have the space to turn and carry and slip. But I also think he's cute enough and clever enough to drift inside off the edges and combine and add a bit of variety in that sense. So I think we've spoken about this before, that's a real strength in one sense, but then the difficulty then can come is, how do you fit that into a system if there's a lot of rotation with player selection around you or behind you or in midfield, because you struggle then to build that relationship and that consistency with, okay, I know who's going to be playing as number 6. He always tends to play this type of pass in that area of the pitch when he's under pressure. And I think that when you play like you did at Leverkusen off instinct, I think that can take a little bit of time.
So you were just speaking then about sort of player characteristics and the instincts. Now, one thing you just said that I really sort of was drawn to was if we can use these sort of sacrifice runs, which is actually like a perfect term for it. I've never really heard it. Is that a thing? Have you made that up?
Yeah, well, I'll take it.
Yeah, take it.
I've definitely heard it before, yeah.
But so Isak, Ekitike, Salah, even Gakpo, to be fair, I think all of them, we were mentioning in that Liverpool piece again about sort of, we had a lot of line stretchers last year, so we had a lot of Diaz, Nunes, sort of people who were running behind who were opening up. So these spaces. So if we can imagine this is Diaz of last season, if he's spinning, we're going and we're sinking players deeper now. Obviously, that opens up the massive hub for Florian Wirtz. I think Szoboszlai actually had a chance in the first half against Chelsea, which was a cutback.
Yes.
I think it was actually blocked on the line.
It was,
and I think that was a nice little move by Isak to, obviously, he's the danger man. You know, he's the goal scorer. I think that's going to definitely be what we're going to have to see more with Wirtz, but as a team, as a collective, to get the best out of him. Yeah. But again, I think, more so to what you're saying, I think it is just a matter of timing and team dynamics.
Yeah, I think like you say, I think those runs you're talking about from Isak, particularly either centre forward really, whoever plays or whoever in the front three plays centrally, I think those little gully runs, the ones you've mentioned, which Isak obviously made for the Szoboszlai chance.
Yeah, the chance, yeah.
I think they will create space not only just for Wirtz, but for your Szoboszlais and for Curtis Jones if he plays in that position, who do like to arrive into the box, Gravenberch if he's a bit higher. And I think it's a lot of it will be that, and I think it sounds very cliche, but I think time is a big thing, and I think ultimately in the Premier League, the fans don't see that.
You don't get it on the pitch, or off the pitch.
Yeah, you don't get it, but I think fundamentally everybody knows that the player that he is and the quality that he has, and I think for me, in my opinion, from what I see, it's just a matter of time of trying to get the best out of him in whatever position that may be. It may be a case of you try and, I don't want to say kind of build the team around how he plays, because there's too many other good players to do that. But I think it may be that you have the ability to try things in certain games if the game is already won. Or last half hour of a match, you might go, right, okay, let's try this and let's try this, because now we can have space to breathe and actually see what may work for him. So I think it's always that balance. People always talk about the money, but that's not on him. And I think you're buying a player with such long-term potential too. It's not like he's a 28, 29-year-old. So
No.
I think that's always got to be taken into account too.
Yeah, I think he's one of them players for me. I've loved watching him over the past few years. I think coming to the Premier League, it's always going to be sort of the different beast in terms of not just the media scrutiny, but sort of on the pitch, sort of being, hounded on the pitch by opposition players. And I think he's a player who, like you said there, plays on instinct, and I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for him to get up to speed. But I personally don't think, and I think a lot of Liverpool fans are the same, I don't think anyone's in Liverpool's fan base are kind of going, what's this guy doing?
Yeah.
But I think they're all sort of going, no, there's a massive transition going on at the club. I think there's a lot of different players who he's playing around, not just as he started his Liverpool career with one set, but he's now on to a second set of new players. So I think there's definitely more to be said about sort of Florian Wirtz and sort of his time sort of at Liverpool so far, and I think it's just going to take a little bit more time for him to build them connections, because he is a short space.
People think as well it's all about connections in front of him, but it's just as important are the connections behind him.
Like you mentioned the Xhaka.
I think it's, people think naturally because he's a forward player, creative player, it's all about the relationships he has with the players that he can bounce off or play wall passes and slip runners in and whatever. But like I said at the start about Xhaka, it's all as well about building the relationships with whoever the single six is, or if they play a double, or he needs to have that stability to know that if he makes a particular movement in a deeper area, that ball will come. So I think that's something, again, will come with time and practice and games and experience, really.
Yeah, no, perfect. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel, and let us know what you've made of Florian Wirtz's start at Liverpool. And we'll catch you next week for some more analysis. Thank you.